she collapsed without warning. As executives scrambled in panic, only the janitor, the invisible man they passed daily without a glance, recognized the signs of a stroke. In those critical seconds, Daniel Carter stepped forward, while everyone else stepped back. In the quiet hours before dawn, when most of San Francisco still slept, Daniel Carter's day had already begun. The soft glow of his bedside lamp illuminated the small but tidy bedroom as he carefully buttoned his gray uniform shirt. At 42, the lines around his eyes had deepened, telling stories of both joy and sorrow. 3 years had passed since the accident that took Sarah, but mornings remained the hardest part of his day, the empty space beside him a constant reminder of what he'd lost. He glanced at the framed wedding photo on his nightstand, the two of them laughing under a canopy of autumn leaves, before gently touching the simple gold band he still wore. Down the hall, he could hear Lily beginning to stir. His 9-year-old daughter was the spitting image of her mother, the same determined chin, the same expressive eyes that could light up an entire room. Daniel moved quietly to the kitchen of their modest South Market apartment, preparing Lily's favorite breakfast. Blueberry pancakes shaped like musical notes. It was a tradition Sarah had started when Lily first showed interest in music at age 4. As he mixed the batter, Daniel found himself humming the melody of Claire de Lune, Sarah's favorite piece to play on violin. Despite their financial struggles, Sarah had always insisted that music brought a richness to life that money couldn't buy. "Is that Mom's song?" Lily appeared in the doorway, her curly hair wild from sleep, clutching the worn stuffed rabbit Sarah had sewn for her. Daniel's face softened. "Good ear, kiddo. How'd you sleep?" "I dreamed about Mom teaching me violin again," Lily said, climbing onto a kitchen stool. She was wearing that yellow dress, the one from the park photo. Daniel nodded, swallowing the familiar ache in his throat. "She loved that dress. Almost as much as she loved teaching you." He flipped a pancake with practiced ease. "Don't forget, Mrs. Henderson will pick you up after school today. I've got the late shift." After breakfast, their morning routine continued with the precision of a well-rehearsed dance, backpacks checked, lunch packed, teeth brushed. Daniel dropped Lily at Jefferson Elementary before heading to Northstar Technologies, where he had worked as a janitor for the past 2 years. The gleaming 40-story building in the financial district housed one of the country's fastest-growing tech companies. Before the accident, Daniel had been a combat medic with the Army's 18th Medical Command, saving lives in some of the world's most dangerous places. Now, he cleaned offices and emptied trash bins, invisible to the executives and programmers who filled the building's sleek corridors. "Morning, Daniel," called Frank, the elderly security guard who was one of the few people who acknowledged him by name. "Heard there's some big emergency meeting upstairs today. CEO's got everyone jumping." Daniel nodded, pushing his cleaning cart toward the service elevator. "Thanks for the heads up. Guess I'll steer clear of the executive floor until it's over." The truth was, Daniel had developed a routine over the months, learning the rhythms of the building and its occupants. He knew which executives worked late, which assistants appreciated a friendly nod, and which departments were the messiest. He also knew that Olivia Bennett, Northstar's formidable CEO, typically arrived at 6:30 each morning and rarely left before 9 at night. He had never spoken to her directly, but he had observed her from afar, her purposeful stride, the slight furrow between her brows that never quite disappeared. The way junior executives scattered from her path like startled birds. By mid-morning, Daniel was methodically working his way through the 38th floor, where most of the executive offices were located. The hallways were unusually quiet, confirming Frank's information about the emergency meeting. As he approached the glass-walled conference room, he could see a gathering of suited figures inside, their faces tense as they focused on Olivia Bennett, who stood at the head of the table, gesturing emphatically at a projected graph. Even from a distance, Daniel could see that something was different about her today. Her normally impeccable posture seemed slightly off, one hand repeatedly reaching up to massage her temple. Daniel paused, recognition flickering in his mind. As a medic, he had been trained to notice subtle signs that others might miss. Over the past few weeks, he had observed Miss Bennett pressing her fingers against her right temple with increasing frequency. He had noticed the slight unsteadiness in her gait, the barely perceptible drooping at the corner of her mouth when she thought no one was watching. Yesterday, while emptying her office trash, he had spotted an empty bottle of extra-strength pain relievers and a half-finished cup of coffee that had been sitting there since morning, unusual for someone known for her meticulousness. He hesitated outside the conference room, knowing it wasn't his place to interfere. She wouldn't appreciate a janitor offering medical opinions. Just last month, when he had left a respectful note suggesting she might want to consult a doctor about her symptoms, she had reported him to management for overstepping boundaries. The reprimand had nearly cost him his job. Inside the conference room, Olivia Bennett felt the familiar pressure building behind her right eye. The throbbing had started 2 months ago and had gradually intensified. She had dismissed it as stress. Running a company in the midst of negotiations for a critical partnership left little time for personal concerns. As she finished outlining the latest quarterly projections, the fluorescent lights suddenly seemed too bright, the room too warm. The faces of her executive team blurred slightly at the edges of her vision. To conclude, she said, her voice betraying none of her discomfort, we need to finalize these numbers before the Mercer meeting tomorrow. I expect revised projections on my desk by. The words died in her throat as a wave of dizziness washed over her. She gripped the edge of the table, but it wasn't enough. The last thing Olivia registered was the horrified expressions of her team as the room tilted sideways and darkness closed in. Daniel was wiping down the water fountain when he heard the commotion-raised voices, a crash, someone shouting for help. Instinct took over before conscious thought. He sprinted toward the conference room, pushing through the small crowd that had gathered at the doorway. Inside, Olivia Bennett lay on the floor, her body rigid, while her chief financial officer knelt helplessly beside her. "I've called 911, a young assistant said, her voice shaking. "They said 8 minutes. Daniel knew that could be too long. He dropped to his knees beside the fallen CEO, quickly assessing her condition. The right side of her face had gone slack, her breathing was labored, and when he checked her pupils, the right one was noticeably dilated. "She's having a stroke," he announced, his voice calm but commanding the same tone he had used in combat situations. "I need space. Someone find a first aid kit with aspirin." As a shocked murmur went through the crowd, Daniel gently turned Olivia onto her side, ensuring her airway remained clear. "Miss Bennett," he said clearly, close to her ear. "If you can hear me, try to squeeze my hand." He felt the faintest pressure from her fingers, a good sign. When someone returned with aspirin, he administered a low dose, then continued monitoring her vital signs, speaking to her in steady, reassuring tones until the paramedics arrived. Possible cerebrovascular accident, he reported to the emergency medical technicians as they took over. Symptoms began approximately 7 minutes ago. Patient maintained consciousness but shows right side facial drooping, slurred speech, and pupil asymmetry. The lead paramedic gave him a surprised look. "You medical?" "Former combat medic, 18th Medical Command," Daniel replied, stepping back to make room for their stretcher. As they prepared to transport Olivia, the paramedic nodded respectfully. "You made the right call. Time is brain in these situations. You probably just saved her life." Daniel watched as they wheeled Olivia toward the elevator, her normally commanding presence now fragile and vulnerable. The executives who had never given him a second glance now stared at him with expressions ranging from surprise to grudging respect. He didn't wait for their questions or thanks. Instead, he quietly returned to his cleaning cart. There were still floors to mop and trash cans to empty. Life went on, even in the aftermath of near tragedy. That evening, as Daniel helped Lily with her homework at their small kitchen table, his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. It was Dr. Eleanor Russell from San Francisco General Hospital. "Mr. Carter? I'm the neurologist treating Olivia Bennett. She experienced a mild ischemic stroke caused by an undiagnosed cerebral aneurysm. The paramedics mentioned your quick action, and I wanted to personally thank you. If you hadn't recognized the symptoms when you did, we'd be having a very different conversation right now." Daniel ran a hand through his short-cropped hair. "How is she doing?" "Stable and responsive. We caught it early enough to administer clot-busting medication, which significantly reduces the risk of permanent damage. She's been asking about the person who helped her. Would you be willing to visit tomorrow? I think it would aid her recovery to thank you personally." After arranging a time to visit, Daniel hung up and found Lily watching him intently. "Was that about the lady who got sick at your work?" she asked. Daniel nodded, impressed by her perceptiveness. "She's going to be okay. The doctor thinks I helped." Lily's face brightened. "Like when you were a soldier, doctor? Mom always said you were the best at fixing people. Your mom was biased." Daniel smiled, though the memory squeezed his heart. Sarah had been so proud of his military service, collecting newspaper clippings whenever his medical unit received recognition. She had framed his commendation for bravery under fire after he had treated 12 wounded soldiers during an ambush in Afghanistan. That frame now sat on Lily's bedside table, a reminder, Sarah had said, that her daddy was a hero even when he wasn't wearing a uniform. The next afternoon, Daniel stood outside Olivia Bennett's private hospital room, feeling strangely nervous. He had faced gunfire with less trepidation than he felt about this meeting. After checking that his uniform was presentable, he knocked softly and entered at the quiet. "Come in." Olivia was sitting up in bed, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, a stark contrast to her usual impeccable bun. Without her usual tailored suit and commanding presence, she looked younger, more vulnerable. A slight droop remained at the corner of her mouth, but her eyes were clear and alert as they fixed on him. "You're the janitor," she said, recognition dawning in her expression. "The one who left me that note about seeing a doctor." Daniel nodded, standing awkwardly at the foot of her bed. "Daniel Carter, ma'am. I'm glad to see you're recovering well." A complicated emotion crossed Olivia's face, something between embarrassment and gratitude. "Dr. Russell tells me I owe you my life. That you recognized what was happening before anyone else did." "I had medical training," Daniel explained simply. "In the Army, we learned to spot the early signs of various conditions. You'd been showing symptoms for weeks." "The headaches," Olivia murmured. "The dizziness. I thought it was just stress." She gestured to a chair beside her bed. "Please, sit down. I owe you an apology for how I reacted to your note. If I had listened instead of being offended." Daniel sat, surprised by her candor. "You couldn't have known. Most people don't expect medical advice from their cleaning staff." For the first time, a smile touched Olivia's lips. "No, I suppose not. Dr. Russell mentioned you were a combat medic. May I ask why you're working as a janitor at Northstar?" The question wasn't asked with condescension, but with genuine curiosity. Daniel hesitated, unaccustomed to sharing his personal history with others, especially someone like Olivia Bennett. Yet something in her expression, perhaps the humbling experience of having her life saved by someone she had previously overlooked, encouraged honesty. "After 3 tours in Afghanistan, I came home to start a family practice with my wife, Sarah. She was a pediatrician. We had it all planned out." Daniel's voice softened with memory. "But 3 years ago, Sarah was killed in a car accident. I wasn't in a good place after that. Couldn't focus on medicine anymore. When you're responsible for people's lives, you need to be 100% present. I had a young daughter to support, so I took whatever work I could find. Northstar offered steady hours that let me be home when Lily needs me." Olivia listened intently, her expression thoughtful. "Your daughter, how old is she?" 9, Daniel replied, unable to keep the pride from his voice. "Smart as a whip and crazy about music. Sarah taught her violin from the time she could hold one. Lily practices every day, says it makes her feel close to her mom." Something shifted in Olivia's expression, a softening, a recognition. "I wanted to play violin as a child. My parents thought it was impractical, insisted on business and economics instead." She glanced out the window, where afternoon sunlight streamed through the blinds. "Funny how life works. All my success, and yesterday I nearly lost everything because I was too stubborn to listen to a warning." Before Daniel could respond, a nurse entered to check Olivia's vital signs. "Looking good, Miss Bennett. You have about 15 minutes before Dr. Russell comes by for your next assessment." After the nurse left, Olivia turned back to Daniel with new resolve in her eyes. "Mr. Carter, I'd like to offer you a position in Northstar's newly formed employee wellness program. We need someone with medical background to coordinate preventative care initiatives. The salary would be considerably better than your current position." Daniel blinked in surprise. "That's very generous, but I don't have my medical license anymore. I let it lapse after Sarah died." "Licenses can be renewed," Olivia countered. "And frankly, after what happened, I'd trust your instincts over half the specialists I've seen recently. Think about it, at least." Her expression grew more serious. "And there's something else. I'd like to meet your daughter. Would you bring her here tomorrow? I understand if that seems strange, but..." She hesitated, seeming to search for words that didn't come easily to her. "I'd like to thank you both properly." The next day, Daniel brought Lily to the hospital after school. She wore her best dress, a blue floral print that Sarah had bought for her last birthday, and carried her violin case. It had been her idea to play for Miss Bennett, explaining to her father with the simple wisdom of children that music makes people feel better when they're sad or sick. Daniel hadn't argued, remembering how Sarah had often played for patients during her pediatric residency. Olivia was sitting in a chair by the window when they arrived, looking stronger than the day before. She smiled when Lily entered, her professional reserve melting at the sight of the earnest child with the too big violin case. "You must be Lily," she said warmly. "Your dad has told me what an amazing musician you are." Lily approached without hesitation, studying Olivia with frank curiosity. "Are you feeling better? Daddy said you had a stroke because your brain didn't get enough oxygen. He said you're really important and run a big company." Olivia laughed, a genuine sound that Daniel suspected didn't escape her often. "I am feeling better, thanks to your dad. And yes, I run a company, though I'm learning that might not be as important as I thought. Lily nodded seriously, as if this confirmed something she already knew. My mom used to say that people are always more important than things or jobs. She was a doctor for kids. She carefully opened her violin case. I brought my violin to play for you. Music is good medicine too. As Lily positioned her instrument under her chin, Daniel noticed Olivia blinking rapidly, visibly moved by the child's simple kindness. When Lily began to play Clair de Lune, Sarah's favorite, the melody filled the hospital room with a poignant beauty that transcended the child's technical imperfections. Daniel watched as Olivia closed her eyes, a single tear tracking down her cheek as the music washed over her. When Lily finished, Olivia opened her eyes, making no attempt to hide her emotion. That was beautiful, Lily. Truly beautiful. Is that piece special to you? Lily nodded, carefully returning her violin to its case. It was my mom's favorite. Dad says when I play it, it's like she can hear me from heaven. Olivia's gaze met Daniel's over Lily's head, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of shared understanding about loss and resilience. Lily, Olivia said, turning back to the child, I understand you're quite dedicated to your music. Your father mentioned you practice every day. I want to be as good as Mom was someday, Lily replied. But my violin teacher at school says I need private lessons to get better, and those cost a lot. And my violin is too small for me now. But Dad says we have to wait until Christmas to see about a new one. Daniel felt a flush of embarrassment at his daughter's candid acknowledgement of their financial constraints, but Olivia didn't seem bothered. Instead, she leaned forward with interest. What if, she said carefully, Northstar's educational foundation provided a scholarship for your lessons? We support promising young musicians, and it sounds like you would be a perfect candidate. Lily's eyes widened. Really? Like, real lessons with a professional teacher? And a properly sized violin, Olivia added, glancing at Daniel with a look that brooked no argument. If that's all right with your father, of course. Daniel started to protest that they didn't need charity, but something in Olivia's expression stopped him. This wasn't pity, it was recognition of talent and potential. It was what Sarah would have wanted for their daughter. That would be incredibly generous, he finally said. Thank you. 2 weeks later, Olivia Bennett returned to Northstar Technologies. The company had continued functioning in her absence, but her return was marked by a subtle yet significant shift in atmosphere. As she walked through the lobby, she made a point of greeting the security guards by name. In the elevator, instead of checking her phone, she engaged in conversation with the administrative assistants who had previously feared her displeasure. And when she reached the executive floor, her first action wasn't to sequester herself in her office, but to call an all-hands meeting. Standing before the assembled employees, Olivia spoke with a new candor that surprised even those who had worked with her for years. Many of you know that I recently experienced a health crisis, she began. What you may not know is that my life was saved by a member of our staff whom most of us, myself included, had failed to truly see. She gestured to where Daniel stood uncomfortably at the back of the room. Daniel Carter recognized the symptoms of my stroke when I ignored them. He acted decisively when others froze. And he did this despite the fact that I had previously dismissed his concerns about my health. A murmur went through the crowd as people turned to look at Daniel, many really seeing him for the first time. This experience has been profoundly humbling, Olivia continued. It's forced me to recognize how often we overlook the contributions and potential of people based on their title or position. Starting today, Northstar is implementing a new initiative I'm calling the Invisible Innovation Program. It's designed to solicit ideas and feedback from every level of our organization, recognizing that valuable insights can come from anywhere. As the meeting concluded, Olivia approached Daniel directly. That wasn't too uncomfortable, I hope? I wanted everyone to understand the impact of what you did. Daniel shook his head. It's fine. Though I might need to get used to people actually looking at me in the hallways now. About that, Olivia said, her professional demeanor softening slightly. Have you considered my offer? The wellness coordinator position? Daniel nodded slowly. I have. I'm grateful, but I've decided to stay in my current role for now. At her surprised expression, he continued, I'm enrolling in a medical license renewal program at San Francisco City College. It'll take time, but eventually, I want to practice medicine again. Sarah would have wanted that. In the meantime, the janitorial position gives me the flexibility I need for Lily. Instead of disappointment, respect flickered in Olivia's eyes. I understand. And the schedule for Lily's violin lessons? She started last week, Daniel said, a genuine smile breaking through his usual reserve. You should have seen her face when she held the new violin. She hasn't stopped practicing since. I'd like to hear her play again sometime, Olivia said, the words emerging with a spontaneity that seemed to surprise even her. Perhaps when she has her first recital? Daniel hesitated only briefly before responding. She'd like that. So would I. Over the following months, a cautious friendship developed between the unlikely pair. Olivia attended Lily's first recital with her new instructor, sitting beside Daniel as the child performed a simple but moving rendition of Bach. Afterward, at Lily's insistence, they shared ice cream at a small parlor near the concert hall, a CEO, a janitor, and a little girl united by music and second chances. Olivia found herself drawn to their modest apartment for dinner on occasion, initially under the pretext of discussing the wellness program Daniel was helping to design despite remaining in his janitorial position. She was touched by the carefully preserved photographs of Sarah that adorned their walls, the well-worn books of poetry that had belonged to Daniel's late wife, the way he still spoke of her with unwavering love. There was something refreshing about his lack of pretense, his complete comfort with who he was, and what mattered to him. For Daniel, watching Olivia shed the armor of her corporate persona was its own revelation. Behind the power suits and strategic decisions was a woman with unfulfilled dreams, someone who worked 16-hour days partly because her luxury apartment held no real sense of home. He found himself looking forward to her visits, to the animated conversations about books and music that often continued long after Lily had gone to bed. He appreciated how she spoke to his daughter as a person, not as a child to be humored, and how she never tried to replace the memory of Sarah but instead asked questions that kept her presence alive in their home. One Sunday morning in early spring, Daniel and Lily were enjoying their traditional weekend picnic at Golden Gate Park. Another tradition Sarah had started. Lily was practicing a new piece on her violin, the music carrying across the green expanse, when Daniel spotted a familiar figure jogging along the path. Olivia slowed as she recognized them, changing direction to approach their blanket. Gone was the corporate attire, replaced by running clothes and a ponytail that swung with each step. I thought that music sounded familiar, she said, slightly breathless from her run. You're getting really good, Lily. Lily beamed at the compliment. We have extra sandwiches, she offered hopefully. Dad always packs too much. And strawberries, they were Mom's favorite. Daniel met Olivia's eyes, a silent question in his gaze. She hesitated only briefly before nodding. I'd love to join you, if I'm not intruding. Not at all, Daniel said, making room on the blanket. As Olivia settled beside them, he noticed how the sunlight caught the auburn highlights in her hair, how relaxed her features were away from the office. He passed her a sandwich, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. I have news, Olivia said, accepting the food with a smile. The board approved the expansion of the Educational Foundation. Starting next semester, we'll be funding music programs in 5 public schools across the city, including Jefferson Elementary. Lily gasped in delight. So my friends can learn violin too? Violin, piano, whatever instrument speaks to them, Olivia confirmed. And we're calling it the Sarah Carter Memorial Music Initiative, if that's all right with you both. Daniel stared at her, momentarily speechless. When he found his voice, it was rough with emotion. Sarah would have. That's incredibly thoughtful, Olivia. Thank you. Olivia shrugged, a gesture that couldn't quite disguise the significance of the moment. It seemed right. She's the reason Lily plays, which led to my hearing her that day in the hospital, which inspired the whole program. She paused, meeting Daniel's gaze directly. Sometimes, the people who aren't with us anymore still shape the world in powerful ways. Lily, who had been listening intently, nodded with the solemn wisdom that sometimes emerged from her. Like how Dad saved you because Mom taught him to always notice when people are hurting, even when they try to hide it. A comfortable silence fell over the trio as they ate their picnic lunch, the spring sunlight warming their shoulders, Lily's violin resting in its open case beside them. In the distance, the bay glittered, bridges spanning impossible distances with elegant precision. I've signed up for violin lessons, Olivia admitted suddenly, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. Adult beginner classes at the community center. I figured it's never too late to pursue an old dream. Daniel smiled, the expression reaching his eyes in a way that had once been rare. Sarah used to say that too. It's never too late. As the afternoon lengthened into golden hour, Lily convinced both adults to attempt a simple trio, her on violin, Daniel on the guitar he occasionally played, and Olivia gamely trying the basic notes she had learned. Their music was imperfect but joyful, drawing smiles from passing strangers. When they finished, Lily threw her arms around both of them, creating a spontaneous group hug that bridged worlds that once seemed impossibly distant. Later, as they packed up their picnic, Olivia hesitated before saying, "There's a symphony performance next weekend, Debussy, including Claire de Lune. I have tickets, if you both would like to join me." Daniel looked at her thoughtfully, seeing the woman who had emerged from behind the CEO facade, someone who had learned to value connection over achievement, presence over power. "We'd be honored," he said simply. As they walked together toward the park exit, Lily skipping ahead with her violin case, Olivia's hand brushed against Daniel's, a touch so light it might have been accidental. But when he glanced at her, the look in her eyes told him it wasn't. No words were needed in that moment of quiet understanding. They both knew that what had begun in crisis had transformed into something neither had expected to find again. The possibility of a new chapter, written with respect for the past but open to the future, one note at a time.